Hello, everyone. We're going to get started tonight. Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Roth. I'm the director here at the Ryerson Image Centre on the ground floor and our research center on the second floor. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight for an artist lecture by the 2017 winner of the Scotiabank Photography Award, Shelley Niro. As you know, tonight's talk accompanies Shelley's current solo survey exhibition downstairs in our galleries, which was curated by Gael Morel, the Rick's Exhibitions curator. This show is a primary exhibition of the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee, which bound them to share the territory and to protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and newcomers to the land to this day are invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I want to thank a few people before we get started tonight, in particular the staff and volunteers at the Ryerson Image Centre, many of whom are here tonight. Together they are responsible as a team for the consistent quality of what we do, and I'm permanently grateful to all of them. It makes it very easy for me to come to work every morning, so thank you to them. President Mohammed Lachimi and the Provost and Vice President Academic here at Ryerson University, Michael Benarosh, are wonderful in their unflagging support for our mission. Our colleagues here in this building that we share with the School of Image Arts, led by Chair Blake Fitzpatrick, are absolutely wonderful colleagues. And the Faculty of Communication and Design, in which IMA sits, is headed by Dean Charles Falzon, also an ardent supporter of ours, and we're grateful to him as well. We want to thank our amazing colleagues at the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival for yet another great season, which is underway all across the city. I encourage all of you to see as many of the exhibitions as you can during the month of May. Toronto could not possibly have a better group of people at the helm of this ambitious, inclusive, joyful Festival of Photography and Media Arts. And we are proud, once again this year, to be the host institution for the festival. Finally, we want to thank our amazing sponsor, Scotiabank, who are funders for both the Scotiabank Photography Award and also for the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival. We're in our 6th year now with Scotiabank as part of their extraordinary initiative called the Scotiabank Photography Award, which is a project now in its 8th year of recognizing and celebrating the most important photographers in Canada. We're honored to present the annual exhibition that accompanies this prize. Last night, downstairs in our galleries, Moira Davey was named the winner of the 8th Annual Scotiabank Photography Award. And next year, we will be presenting a survey exhibition at this time of her work. Our warmest thanks go to Joan Burgess, in particular at Scotiabank, who every year runs the award and all of its different moving parts with such consistent success and unflagging good spirit, and as well to the whole team that she works with at Scotiabank. Our summer exhibitions, including Shelley's show, they're happening in the context not only of this month's festival, but also throughout the summer until early August. And I encourage you to see all of them when you can, including perhaps even tonight after the talk. The shows include Nadia Mir, Acts That Fade Away, which is curated by Gael Morel on our Salad Bashir New Media Wall. In our student gallery from April 28th through June 10th, we have Ryan Walker, Voices in the Wilderness, curated by Sarah Angelucci, who directs our student gallery program. On our From the Collection wall, there's an installation of selections from Ruth Kaplan's Bathers, curated by Denise Burkhofer, our collections curator. And finally, outside the building, to the north, across Gould Street and in Lake Devo, we're hosting one of Contact's many public art installations, which are sited throughout the city. Scott Benasinabandan's Newlandia, de Baba Minagwad, curated by Bonnie Rubenstein, who is the creative director of Contact. And now it's my honor to introduce Shelley Niro, who is the winner of the 2017 Scotiabank Photography Award. Before we start, I ask you to mute all of your cell phones if you haven't done so already. Please note that we are going to be recording tonight's talk, and afterward, during the Q&A, we will be providing a microphone for anybody that wants to ask questions. But please, if you do want to ask a question and we call on you, please wait for the microphone before you begin to speak so that you are heard clearly on the recording. The exhibition downstairs explores Shelley Niro's career with special focus on her portraiture and video work. It includes more than 70 objects with both seminal projects represented and also never-before-shown photographs. Shelley actually has a much more comprehensive practice than this show can fully represent. She is a multidisciplinary artist who works not only in photography and video, but in painting, beadwork, and film. And I really do encourage you to look at the wonderful book that was just on surveying her career at greater scale than we could possibly do in the gallery, so that you get a better idea of the full range of her many decades of production. With directness and humor, she crafts new narratives throughout all of her work based on the past, on pop culture, her own lived experience, and her family. Her work focuses on themes of identity, and it typically challenges stereotypes and colonial representations of Indigenous peoples with a particular focus on Indigenous women. Last year, 2017, was a real year of retrospection for Shelley. In addition to winning the Scotiabank Photography Award, she was also honored with the Governor's General Award in Visual Media Arts, and she presented her exhibition 1779 at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, such as it is, Shelley Niro.
Thanks, Paul. That was a great introduction. See, art to me is treading into territory. You don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. For example, I thought of this for a while, like, how am I going to introduce my lecture? In the mid-60s, my brother and I were asked to deliver something to a neighbor for my father. I don't recall what it was. Probably some money he owed him or a hammer. I don't know. We left our house just as someone had stopped by for a visit. The house was aglow with laughter and the kitchen lights were on. We made our way to the road. On this particular night, the part of the world in which we had lived was experiencing a total eclipse of the moon. It was pitch black out. The houses near us were spaced out quite a bit, and there were no street lights. We had to feel our way to the neighbor's house by tapping along the road to find the ditch we didn't want to fall in. In total, it felt like hours, but it was more like a 15-minute walk. We did our duty and delivered the package. It was now time to return home. Same procedure of tapping along the edge of the road until we found our house. We got back home, no one the wiser what we had to do to get to there and back. Much like my art practice, I get there and I get back, and I don't know how sometimes. So this is a photograph I took in 1985 called The Wild Ones and the Colonized. This is a photograph I took of my mother in 1982. When I took this photograph, it was taken on a color roll of film, but because I had limited resources, I printed it in black and white and then I hand tinted the photo. I called it the Rebel because my mother, the car she's on is called the Rebel. And she's a little bit of a rebel too. This piece is called The Iroquois, a highly developed matriarchal society. The design on the bottom is to represent an Iroquois celestial tree, and that's supposed to represent the world. And this is a hand-tinted piece as well. And this one is also Mohawk on a cloud, and Mohawks and beehives. And I apologize if people have heard this before, but this set of work was done in 1991 after the Oka crisis in Oka, and after many months of feeling really frustrated by how Mohawk people were being portrayed, not only Mohawk people, but Native people in general. And so I thought, well, I'm going to ask my sisters to participate in a in the series to create a day of fun and, kind of taking control, even in a minuscule way. So these are my sisters. This one is called Portrait of the Artist Sitting with the Killer Surrounded by French Curves. And people often ask me, who's the killer? They could all be killers, but they're not. It's the cigarette. Yeah. But it always leaves people like mystified, like, which one of them is the killer? Okay, this is part of the series as well, and it's behind us stands a monument to the great late Chief J.B., and that's Joseph Brant. He brought us from Upper New York State from the Mohawk Valley, carried in his jeweled bag and blown into the wind. We grew as maples, oaks, and pines along the banks of the Grand. We followed that yellow brick road and clicked our red heels hard. But this is where we'll stand forever, or stay forever, and for thee we stand on guard. And growing up in an Indian community and being educated in an Iroquois school, we were often told that, if it wasn't for our ancestors, there would be no Canada, because we were the ones who became the warriors and protected the land and all that sort of thing. So this is just kind of a minuscule historical representation of what we were brought up to believe. Oh, and that's Joseph Brant. There's a statue in Brantford, Ontario, my home, and it's quite a handsome statue. In her younger years, she was so carefree, laughing, singing, dancing. She would look out to the horizon and let her thoughts drift out with the never-ending tide. As maturity set in, she would become depressed. She would become depressed over the fact that soap operas had no ending. Some country music reminded her of soggy cornflakes, and she could never find the matching sock to the one she held in her hand. Native issues would never be resolved in her lifetime. She would give herself a shake and realize Christmas was 6 months away and the kids would be out of school soon. And Friday was just a day away. And that's how that piece looks when it's all together. This work was done in 1992, and it's called, this whole series is called This Land is Mime Land. For this series, I went to a local costume rental place, and whatever I could fit into, I rented. So I rented 6 outfits. The rest I had to make up, and this is one of the ones I made up. So the first one is supposed to be a contemporary image. The second one is a family member, and the third one is me just being me, as you'll see me anyways. And I also put designs around the mat board. And to me, these are little symbols of like Iroquois culture. I use Iroquois because everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's like a doorway you have to step through to just totally understand the work. I hope. This piece is called 500 Year Itch, and that's my mom. Final Frontier, it's my daughter. Judge Me Not, that's my sister at a protest in Ottawa. Love Me Tender. A Mohawk worker. That's my dad, he's about 17 there. North American Welcome, again, that's my mother at a powwow wearing their t-shirt. Santa is a Dene. You know, Santa was Indigenous to the territory he came from, he'd be Dene. Survivor. And that's my father's grandmother. I really like this one because there's my dog. She just would come and sit in front of the camera as well. warning of snow, always a gentleman, camouflaged. Okay, this work was done in 1993. The paintings I did while doing a residency in Banff, and it was first exhibited at London Museum in London, Ontario. And it's a combination of paintings and photographs. The photos are representing sort of real life and what you have to do when you live in a city. And the paintings are, you know, what's beyond the city and what's beyond the cement. So there's the first image from that. It's Woodstock, the friendly city, City Hall, Provincial Court, private parking, and thank you and call again. This is a series I did in '94 at Lightworks in Syracuse, and it was way before Photoshop. So what I did was I would print photos and cut them out and paste them down, and then, you know, do all that beadwork design around the photographs themselves. I was really interested in creating kaleidoscopic images, but once I started pasting and cutting and everything, it just, you know, that whole process sort of simplified itself. That's probably the only kaleidoscopic image I have in that series. And most of these works really don't have titles. They're just called Flying Woman number 1, Flying Woman number 2. This one has a title. It's Flying Woman number 3, Earthman meets Flying Woman. 4. And I forget, this one had a title, but I forget what it was. This one is Finding Others Like Herself, and it's at a powwow. And somebody asked me, why is it a mirrored image? I just started working with the mirrored image because I thought it was really just kind of pretty how it connected together. Finding Others Like Herself, B. Again, it's during that, the time we went to, like a protest in Ottawa. And so the sign there says Justice for All Aboriginal People. Number 7, I think. And I really like working with design when I'm doing photographs. This one was done in '94, I think. Okay. In my culture, there are no monuments, no man-made structures, no tourist sites. One visits, burns tobacco, and says a prayer. I should also say that this was made because I was with 2 other friends, and they walked up to the light torch at the Statue of Liberty, and I didn't want to go there. I didn't really want to spend the time in a small, confined area. So I just stayed outside and looked at the tourists. Think of our elders and ancestors, remind ourselves of the importance, the significance this space holds. We don't need reminders. I remember, I forget the year, reading Little Abner, living on the 4th line of the Six Nations Reserve, Fearless Fosdick got stabbed in the heart. The knife had to remain buried deep in his chest. It couldn't be removed for fear of death. He survived and went about his daily life, banal routines with that big handle getting in the way of everything. Roaming the earth in earthly disguise, constantly searching, looking for signs. Saying my prayers, I now carry the blade for Fearless and other Indians. In my culture, there are no monuments. And that's for Fearless and other Indians. And Fearless wasn't an Indian person at all. He was a detective, and I just thought I'd, you know, let you in, because sometimes people think that he was the Indian in Little Abner, but he wasn't. This is the shirt, which is downstairs. I don't want to spend too much time on the shirt because I think people have heard me talk about the shirt, and it's the video is downstairs and the installation is downstairs. But I think the words in the shirt themselves are so self-explanatory that, you know, I don't think I have to, but I'll just read the words. My ancestors were annihilated, exterminated, murdered, and massacred. They were lied to, cheated, tricked, and deceived. Attempts were made to assimilate, colonize, enslave, and displace them. And all I get is this shirt. Whoop, what happened to my shirt? Somebody else has the shirt. And that's the landscape. This work is called The Sensuality of Ceremony, and it really comes from a major story in Iroquois culture based on the legend of the peacemaker, and I won't go into that story because it'll take up all night. But I wanted to bring this essay down to the essence of that story, and it's after a long period of a lot of horrible incidences in the Iroquois culture that, well, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about that story. It was after, I think it was after first contact, because Native population in North America went from 19 million to basically 600,000. And losing the population like that, you lose elders, you lose mentors, you lose a lot of people who will tell you and explain to you what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. So, you know, after, we don't even know how long this went on for, but then the peacemaker came and he basically told people how to live and what to do to make life better for themselves and others around them. So I really brought it down to looking at the five senses, and because in the story, there's always a mention of burning tobacco. So to me, that's like, you know, the sense of smell. This is the sense, no, that's the, I don't know what that is. Oh, no, that's not smell. That's hearing. This one is smell, and it's about tobacco. And I should go back to this one too, singing. Because there's always mention of singing. You know, when people start healing, they will be inclined to sing, they'll be inclined to stimulate other people through their voice. This is the sense of taste. There was cannibalism, and the peacemaker said, you know, you should be eating what the Creator has provided for you, which in this case is deer. So, and the sense of touch. Often in the story, it's wiping away the tears of grief so we can think with clear minds and continue to make our own communities better and healthier. What's that? I don't know. I think that's a sense of touch. I'm a little mixed up here. Anyways, I'm going to go on to the next one. This piece, which is downstairs, is called Girls, Ghosts, and Grandmas. And sometimes I can articulate pieces of work and say, oh yeah, this is what this means, and this is what this means, and you put it together, and you know, you come up with an essay, what the work is supposed to represent. And sometimes I can't come up with an essay, but I just know that I just want the work to be together. In this case, I made a frame out of wampum beads. And when you use wampum, it's supposed to depict a treaty, it's supposed to depict history, it's supposed to have some kind of representation, and you can pass it on to somebody else and they're supposed to know. But I just wanted to use the wampum beads to show that this work is coming from an Iroquois community. So I made it really kind of abstract and put it around the images. And I think sometimes too, this work is, I like to think of it as being visual poetry, and that we don't have to know what some work is about. I think as long as there's like satisfaction in looking at the work. This is the girls part, and the dog is there again. And I like to use the trees as an example of like wind rushing through those trees, and they're telling stories, and you know, if we listen long enough, we can hear those stories being told. And grandmas, and I think the grandmothers are always trying to teach us something through storytelling. Surrender nothing always. I've used a turtle rattle, and I've used painting brushes, and it's using your body to be able to deliver what you know you're capable of doing. In this case, it's being creative and making a painting or making something so that other people can see it and people will communicate by what they're looking at. Grand River. I took this piece in 2006, and there was a conflict at that time. You know, Caledonia wanted to build houses on property that Six Nation owned, and it created a lot of conflict with police and people from Caledonia and people from Six Nations. But when I was driving once through this area, I just thought it's such a perfect photograph, so I went home, got my camera, and took this picture. And use the 2-row wampum around the photograph just to remind ourselves what treaties were made for. In this case, the 2-row is supposed to be 2 rivers. You know, one is the European river, one is the native river, and it's if you stay in your river and I stay in my river, we should be able to get along pretty good. Did it work? This piece is called the Apiata. And I took the title from Michelangelo's most famous marble sculpture, and it's the mother holding her dead son in her lap, her mind beyond the sorrow and grief of accepting her child has perished. As I observe the daily news on my television, I am drawn to the mother's fate of how she will accept the news of her child. And I have to say, this was done, you know, in 2007 or 8. And it's when we always have these news flashes of the Iran war and the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war, and how often, you know, like I can't imagine living there and having all these conflicts happening to your family and children. So, so her child, you know, trying to accept the news of her child, acting as soldier, meets with the fate that is most often dreaded in times of war. I can only imagine the scenario. This sculpture always appears in my mind as I reminisce about that. Coming from a Native community, we are not expected to express our points of view on the world stage. Our perspective is seen as primitive and unnecessary. With this photo essay, I want to give a personal perspective. So this is Passage. The first and the 7th image are of water. I use this to symbolize the importance of an element, essential for all living things. Without it, we would die. The earth uses it to cleanse and heal itself after periods of chaos and turmoil. Water carries us for 9 months in our mother's womb and makes our journey into this world easier. Water promises a life of abundance, growth, safety, and hope for the future. This is the Mohawk Valley. This infinite view represents what was lost in the diaspora of the Iroquois Haudenosaunee people when they were forced to leave the Mohawk Valley after the American Revolution. The natural beauty, never to be returned to, takes my breath away. Again, the landscape represents mother, a place of always producing, always there, and a place that had to be defended and eventually lost. The maternal homeland still waits for the return of her people. Sorrow. This image is a close-up of the resources, a single tree. The detail allows the viewer to see what would otherwise be ignored. We can examine each bark chunk, each shadow and crease. The knots act as invitations for us to listen and comment on the physicality of each tree as an individual. They have character and personality and can be cut down at will by any man. Hearing trees fall. This series of images are to represent resources that are lost and damaged in times of war. The grand landscape is torn apart. Over time, the earth will heal itself. The loss of young life leaves a definite scar on the world, no matter whose life, whose side of the battle that was fought, and mothers will cry forever. Today. I've returned to the landscape, a different type of landscape. This photo was taken in the winter. The leaves and the grass are gone. The bare limbs of the trees hang in anticipation of spring. As a metaphor to sadness, this forest looks full, but it's empty at the same time. The bareness waits, never knowing when birds will sing again from its branches. The Edge of Awakening. This photo was taken at the edge of Caledonia. It was taken before the protests and land claims filled the front pages of the local newspaper in the summer of 2005. These hydro towers look like they are sneaking up out of the landscape. They're also representative of the power this place holds, but it's not a spiritual power, but a monetary one. A superficial power putting everyone on hold, juxtaposed with the Grand River. I find these two connecting elements catapults my imagination back to the time when our traditional ancestors tried to remain in their contemporary world negotiating with politicians and businessmen. I feel like we have not moved on since that time. And this is the water theme again. I have written here about the wampum frame. When I started to think about this series of images, I wanted it to be an abstract slew of photos. Much like visual poetry, I wanted these images to blend together and form not a literal meaning, but give it an emotional sensation. I wondered how I could make the statement representative of war, motherhood, the destruction of the earth, and the destruction of armies trained to move as a unit and ultimately die or succeed. I'm so dramatic. I began by thinking of poppies and how they would become the symbol of past wars. We immediately know what their place is. I was going to put a representation of what a poppy might look like in wampum beads. I was also thinking about what Tom Porter, the Mohawk elder, had said as he explained a wampum belt he was holding at a gathering many years ago. The belt he held was held up and down, not sideways, and there was something that looked like a cross. He said anthropologists say this design was influenced by the church. He said the symbol is confused with the Christian cross, but he went on to explain it is the traditional symbol showing the spirit world and the earth. There's a line representing the earth and a shorter line continuing showing the sky world in the direction your spirit leaves once you pass on. Remembering that story, I started to make a wampum belt representing war and keeping in mind a poppy. I wanted this belt to also have a balance of black and white, good and bad. I'm not educated in the philosophy of war, so I didn't want to comment on it. I do know people are affected by it everywhere and every day, and I wanted the red cloth behind the belt to be obvious about representation of bloodshed. Together with the beads and the red broadcloth, I wanted to contain the photos to be seen as an Iroquois comment on how we are aware of the outside world and how we are affected by the activity of outside forces. This piece is just a condensation of the previous photo essay, and it's just called War. I'll quickly go through the rest of the photos because I know you guys have better things to do. This is from a series called Borders, and it's a man and a woman stretching out, to reach each other, and there's the DNA underneath, and birds on top, and the evolution of the airplane also. This one is called Borders, and it's about conflict and how that conflict is sometimes resolved and sometimes how it's looked at and, how we're supposed to solve it. Treaties and there's the 2-row again. Underneath is the Grand River with hydropoles and unity. And I think with this piece, I was really looking at what makes all of us human and what makes all of us wanting to have a better life. And it's about the unity after we pass on, or who passes on before us, and the memories of the people that do and what we remember from them. This piece is also downstairs, and I don't know, I really like this piece because I found it in Saugerties, New York, in a little antique store, and it was a stack of these stereograms. Is it called stereograms? But I thought the story was just really powerful. So I totally responded to this. And I thought, here's a story of this young girl, and she's really kind of celebrated. And in Iroquois culture, we don't really have too much celebration, or I shouldn't say that, but you know, our stories aren't really well known, even to Iroquois people. This is the 2-row. I've taken that 2-row again, and I've put it through Photoshop, and I just thought it was really exciting to look at the piece, and to me it looks like flowers and has a feminine touch to it. And this piece here is, I didn't make up the story. I just told the story of Jocasta. She was a woman from the Peacemaker story, and I'll just read it. Jocasta prepares warriors and warns them against danger. Before recorded history in Haudenosaunee territory lived a Seneca woman who is considered evil. It was known to others she would poison hunters and travelers as they passed through her area. She witnessed change in a man we now know as Tadadaho after meeting the great prophet known as the Peacemaker. He, the cannibal, was a horrible person who lost all humanity within himself. He scared everyone away. When he started to live the good life, he was seen as an intellectual and had great power to reason. Jocasta realizes that she was not doing good and understood she too can change. She begins by helping warriors by providing rest and food for their journey. Jocasta had had much influence on the people around her. After the League of Nations is formed, she is given the role of choosing the chief within the Iroquois Confederacy. She was the first woman who carried this title or position and is now known as the Mother of all Nations. How much time do I have? Anybody? Okay. 10 more minutes, okay. Okay. This series is called Story of M, and it's really using the female representation in the work, and I wanted to create work that was positive about women, Native women. In this one, it's called Ancestor. For many years now, the murdered and the missing have always been, it's right there. It's always to be talked about and acknowledged, and asking your own questions like, why is this happening? In this piece, I just wanted to think about ancestorhood and where our stories come from, which is often Sky Woman, who comes from the sky. We won't talk about that one, no. Again, this one has body bags in the background, and it's a reminder to myself, like that time when there was the flu virus, the H1N1, and Native communities from Northern Ontario asked the minister to send them the flu virus shot, but they said they had none, so instead they sent 200 body bags. This one's called Blanket. It's just representing Hudson Bay. This one is Finding Her Helpers, the story of Sky Woman as she's coming through the hole in the sky, about to land on Turtle Island, and how she was helped down to the back of that, the great turtle. This one is called Opportunities. This one is called Legacy. This one is called Many Horizons. It's my friend Laurie Blondeau, and there's 4 little buffaloes on the bottom, each representing her children. And I've used a Edward Curtis photo as a background to this piece. Memories of Flight and Routes. My friend Jackie Carpenter, who comes from Attawapiskat, and it's people from her area who helped the Hudson Bay surveyors back in the day, and I just wanted to sort of remind myself like that history as well, because sometimes we just kind of get pretty nonchalant about it. This one's called Beginnings. This work is called Sleeping Warrior. This is Dreaming of Hunting. This is Sleeping Warrior, Dreams of Life in the Sky. Sleeping Warrior, Dreams of Fighting No More. Sleeping Warrior, Dreams of Power and Pastures. 4 Directions of Sleeping Warrior, and Dressing Sleeping Warrior. So I like to have fun sometimes. This work was also done in 2015, and it's called Solace, and I think it's about the influence that come to me, which is the murdered and the missing, and at the time there was the Idle No More campaign that was happening as well. So with these images, I just wanted to create a feeling of solace, and I took all the black and white landscape shots I had and really made it into a installation. So it's 6 pieces in this installation here. I'm almost done, I promise. I've been collecting Indian head nickels for a while, and with this piece I also have in the middle is a image of fossils that I found on Lake Erie, and I think, I love fossils, but to find these, they were like, it's like a gift, because I find them so interesting. And I call this series History of the World. So to me, it's like looking at the nickel and, responding to that as a monetary source, but the fossils themselves are not monetary at all, but it's like a reminder of our own existence. So I just use different nickels, different fossils. It's all about money. Oh, I'm almost done. Okay, these are little toys I have at home, and many Native artists use these toys in their work, but I thought, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. This one I call the show off, and they're really great little pieces. You can see all the muscles in them. I got really attached to them. Yeah. This one's the dimpled one. He's got these really great dimples. Then Everybody Got Mad. Mr. Ambidextrous. Day at the Beach. Give her bread and cheese. No. We have this thing on the reserve called Bread and Cheese Day, and it's on Victoria's birthday, May 24th. And they still do it, but every Victoria Day, everybody lines up and gets a piece of bread and cheese. And we're always told it was given to us by Queen Victoria after the Six Nations moved from Mohawk Valley to where we are now. And in that move, we had nothing. There was no food, nothing. And so at one point, she said, well, let them have some bread and cheese on my birthday. So, but everybody shows up and gets it. This is the last one. It's called Nature's Scream. And it's a tree that I found around Brantford, and I took a picture of this, and then I went back to take more pictures, and then I couldn't find it. So I think the tree was screaming at me, and when I went back, it was gone. And that is it.
All right, we're going to have a Q&A session. I don't often do this, but I actually have a question, so I'm going to start, if you don't mind, Shelley.
Okay.
One of the things I'm really curious about in your work is that practically right from the earliest pieces that I've seen, not exactly at the beginning, but pretty early in your work, you started making constructed object images that include image but also include so many other things, and they often involve collage, sequential images, series, narrative stories that take place over time, but they also have text, they have beadwork, you think very consciously about your frames, and once it starts, in many ways it never stops. You have always new ways of working, but that presence of many different things coming together to make a complex story using images is a thing that you have done from very early to the present. And I wonder how that started for you. How did you first do that? Was that something that you learned in school? Was that something that you saw in other work that you admired? Did you just develop that aesthetic on your own?
I developed it on my own. No. I like to think of photographs as sculpture. You know, so it's like there has to be more to a photograph than just taking a picture and then printing it and framing it and sticking it on a wall. I think I'm more satisfied by something that I feel there's layers in there, and you know, it's just something that I do because I just want to see how far I can take that image, and making those frames or whatever else, you know, by the time I'm done, it's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a strong tradition in the photo world that began kind of in the late 60s and which has persisted, although it's not as I don't see it as commonly as I used to, say from the 60s through the late 80s, of constructed work. Were there any other artists that you were looking at who were using photography in that way?
Geez. You know, I am affected by everything I look at. So I take art history very seriously, but I can't think of anybody right now. Can't think of any of those names. But I'm sure that there's a great love to looking at stuff. So, you know, I really like Dada work. I think that there's something there that I really respond to. And I think once you start looking at work and you respond to the work, then you try to create that kind of communication with your own work, you know, and with other work you're looking at.
Right. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
You work in photography and painting and sorry. I have a loud voice though. You work in painting, photography, and film, and I'm wondering about, and you also have this deep respect and work with bead workers and things like this. What do you see as the relationship between all those things for you, and how do you make choices about how you're going to represent, what medium you're going to work in?
It really comes down to the time of year. I find that I do beadwork in the wintertime a lot because you can stay inside and watch TV, and you know, you don't have to go and carry stuff around. And you can, it's very small, so you're like, you know, doing little stuff like that. And painting is good in the summertime because you can be outside, especially if you're an oil painter. But I kind of like to do everything. Like, I can't do painting and photography at the same time. It has to be one or the other. So it's like by the time I finish doing something in photography, it's like I really need to do painting, you know, just to break out of that. If you're working on a computer, everything is kind of small and, you know, compact. So it just really depends on what I've just finished.
Any other questions? Right over here.
Hi. Firstly, it was fantastic hearing you talk about your process. I'm kind of mind blown right now. I just wanted to hear a bit about, I guess you were talking a bit about your work before the days of Photoshop and the intricate, cutting out of from photographs and then integrating beadwork into that, and then your transition into, I guess, working with computers and digital, the manipulation of images on computers. And I guess maybe if you can comment a bit about your transition into that work, how it's similar, different, if you prefer one over the other. I guess about your process and the transition of that.
Yeah, going from analog to digital was very hard to do. It's such a long, you have to resign yourself and say, okay, now I'm going to go into the digital world. And after you do that, and then you start to learn how to do it, okay, it's like, wow, this is so easy. Why did I fight so much? But I find now when I'm looking at black and white photographs that were, developed in a darkroom and printed in a darkroom, I really miss looking at black and white photographs that way too, because there's something that's, you just don't get in your digital work. Yeah.
Any other questions? Back here.
I'm just wondering if you can share with us what has been one of your most challenging works and why, and if that work corresponds to maybe your feeling of achievement as an artist, or if it was another project, or...
I don't know, I think every time I start something, it always feels like a challenge. You start out with an idea, and then I don't know if I've ever, sometimes you think, am I getting this? Am I feeling that way? Am I feeling like I'm accomplishing something? And I think you just have to keep working until you finish the idea, and then you have to step back and maybe even put it away for a while, and then bring it out and look at it. But I don't know. I think you just have to keep going regardless of if you feel good about it or not.
Do you have a favorite work?
The last work is always my favorite.
Shelley, do you typically just make work out of your own energy, or are you driven by opportunities to show the work? In other words, do you have to make work to fill an exhibition that's coming up?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes it's like a challenge to make that work and fulfill that, the time limits. But sometimes it's really good to have those deadlines, because it's I really got to get to work now. Yeah. But I don't know. I like deadlines too, because then it really, you have to really charge yourself, and you really have to keep going and really try to find something interesting to say.
Speaking of which, I hope I can say that you are about to embark on a feature film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Deadlines.
Yeah.
Nothing but deadlines for the
Yeah.
rest of the year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Up there?
I found Apiata quite profound and quite emotional, and also your Two Roads series showing the Grand and those power lines dominating at all times. As we move into Truth and Reconciliation, are you seeing any hopefulness from this?
Yeah, I don't want to be too negative about Truth and Reconciliation, because I think there are people who are really working towards that end of it all. I think we just have to keep reminding ourselves why we've gotten to that point where we have to look at Truth and Reconciliation, what brought that about. And it's really about forgetting about what people have had to go through to get to that point. And most often it's residential schools, and you know what the people who went through that experience, like, I think most of them are not here with us now who can tell us their truthful stories. But I think we just have to keep, just reminding us, and just trying to make it a gentle reminder, as opposed to, well, I shouldn't say that, because there are people who do respond in a really great way and make their points, you know. But I like to be helpful about that.
Chimagwich.
Yep.
Right over here. And then after that, David. Okay.
Hi. You used DNA in a couple of your works, and I was wondering if you could speak to the symbolism of that.
Yeah, well, the DNA stands for what makes up all of us, you know. It's all a part of us. But I really like using that symbol because to me it looks like wampum belts. If you take it and you untwist it, it could be like a wampum belt. And so I just thought, well, that's a damn good design. Yeah. So I use it whenever I can.
So it's appropriate that you made everybody laugh, because my question was about humor, and you use humor a lot, and you're very funny, but you're also very political, and your work is very pointed very often. So I wondered about whether humor with you is just natural, or whether it's strategic, or whether you find that it gives you a different kind of license.
I practice every day for 10 minutes. To me, I like humor because it's like, you know, there's always got to be something funny there somewhere. And I don't know, it's just part of my DNA. But I like humor a lot.
Any other questions? Over here, and then next over there.
Thank you. Could you say a little bit more about the image that you hang between the two stereographs? Like, how you've distorted the wampum beads, and whether the red background has some symbolic significance, and so forth?
Yep. This is the danger of using filters in Photoshop. Because I started playing, I forget the name of the filter I was using, but you can really start pulling those things out, and you know, I thought, wow, that looks really like a flower. And you know, because I was using with the work about two different women, I thought I'm going to put that in the middle. And the red to me just kind of makes it pop out a little bit, and it just gives it kind of a life on its own.
Over there.
I wanted to build off of the humor question. When did you realize that humor worked in your art? Or was it always a part of your art? Or I'm an art teacher and working with young students. And it's always fun to see when a student has that realization that humor works in their art. And I wanted to know if you could speak to that, when you realized it worked for you, or how you would perhaps foster that or nurture that in younger artists?
Yeah. When I first started making art, particularly photographs, I looked at a lot of Iroquois artwork, and it was humorless. And so when I started, like the Iroquois is a highly developed matriarchal society, I thought, why is nobody else saying this? You know, or why aren't we exploring those things that we've heard all our lives? Like we've always heard that growing up, you know, oh, the Iroquois is a highly developed matriarchal society. So there's like, you know, we could take any kind of catchphrase and make art out of it. And I think it's just, you know, just seeing what's out there and seeing what people are saying. And yeah, I don't know. I was always afraid that I would do something and then I'd come to an exhibition and there'd be 10 of those, you know, somewhere hanging up.
We have time for 2 more questions. One down here. Sorry, right down there at the front on that end of the room. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a large body of work built over time, beginning in the 1970s. I was paying attention to the exhibit downstairs, of course. You show a lot of familiar pictures, your relationship with your mother, your grandmother, and your sisters. I guess nowadays we call it expressive art therapy. You're doing it to try to heal, try to make sense of what happened. So can you tell us more about this thing? Nowadays we call it expressive art therapy, but you're doing it your way back then already.
My psychiatrist told me to. No, no, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Well, when I was a young artist, and I'd look at exhibitions of, like, say, Native art, there were very few Native women artists, very few Native women pieces that had representation of women in them. And it just seemed, clear to me that there's nothing there. There's like this specific idea of what Indian women should look like and what they should represent. And, we don't do that, and we aren't that way. And so I just thought there's a whole field out there that we can be exploring, we can be showing, and showing like real people. So in my work, I use my mother, my sisters, my children, my nieces, and it's just a way of just showing part of our world that we are real people. We aren't necessarily a stereotype. I make work that goes against what the stereotype shows and talks about.
One more question.
There's one there.
Let me think of how to phrase this. For someone who's not part of the community and is creating art and wants to talk about the sort of issues that your work deals with and wants to do it in a politically positive way, what advice would you give to that person?
Watch Dances with Wolves. No. Just kidding. I think first of all, you just have to make what you want to make, and then it's up to you to put the work out there, and then you get the criticism back. So whatever criticism comes your way, good or bad, that's what happens, So that's all I can say.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Shelley. Appreciate it. Our galleries are open downstairs until 9 p.m. I encourage all of you to go downstairs, look at the show, and also to buy Shelley's wonderful book at our front desk. Thank you very much.
And my art.